Yeah, absolutely. So one of the main things when growing up in Florida, right? So not everything is like palm trees, especially where I'm from, because a lot of the people there are at medium or like below the poverty line. So for the first 18 years of my life, really all I knew was, okay, most of the people around me are going to end up staying here. And most of
Yeah.
the people that are around me aren't making the money that they want to make.
Yeah.
So, and that's not to say that I didn't have things that I needed. You know, I always had a place to stay, food to eat. Um, but along the way, I kind of started to notice things like, oh, we're buying more than we can afford, and we're in a lot of debt, and the money that we used to spend when we didn't have all the things that we have now, I mean, that money isn't going as far as it used to, or
Mm.
XYZ. And then there were financial issues in some relationships around me. I saw how it affected people. Um, but at 18, I had started moving around and like kind of branching out to become my own person and learn some of the harder lessons on my own. And it put me in a really unique position because I had been not only like making money on the side with people that I had known, like personal connections, family, doing like really hard labor stuff, but also at the same time, I was trying to join the military. Um, so it was a really unique aspect of like getting perspective from people who had never left and then getting perspective from people who had been all around the world,
Mhm.
i.e. like recruiters or people who had been brought to the point where they're like, okay, well, the military is the best option for me, XYZ.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's so interesting that you say that because, I kind of come from a similar background. I was born and raised in Hawaii, and it's, like you said, everyone thinks similar to Florida, it's all palm trees, it's tropical, life is good, but the harsh reality is for a lot of people, local people who are born and raised there, it's simply not the case. They're living paycheck to paycheck. They are racking up insane amounts of debt and uh, just kind of not even paying it off because they don't have the means to pay it off. And I've seen, you know, friends of mine and classmates go off into the military because, like you said, it's kind of like their best option at that time. So what, besides your situation and the environment that you grew up in, were there any other driving factors that made you decide to join the military?
so it was almost the way I think a lot of people end up in, even more specifically, end up in the Marines is the idea that you're not wanted or needed there, and get told that very upfront.
Yeah.
Um, so they're kind of one of the pickier groups, and it's almost a challenge at that point. So a lot of people are like, I don't really care if you don't want me. This is something that I'm interested in. So then it becomes like almost the bait that brings you in. Um, and interestingly enough, I wasn't interested at all in like the military from like the perspective of being 17. The way I got brought in is my friends had been talking to a recruiter,
Mhm.
and we were all on like wrestling and football teams together, and I had never talked to a recruiter a day in my life. I actually wanted to, when I first started talking to recruiters, I started with the Army because
Okay.
they were talking about, oh, here's this bonus, like high school to flight school. This is your opportunity.
Yeah.
Um, Eventually things weren't working out there, and the Marine recruiter was like, hey, I mean, I have an open door. So out of like my entire high school wrestling team, 6 out of 10 of us joined the Marine Corps. So
Oh, wow.
it was almost like their desired recruiting pool. That's
Yeah.
where they got us.
Wow. And do you feel like they kind of use that, as an advantage as far as the military going into communities that, are either right above or right below the poverty line?
I'm not sure if it's like designated based on economic status. I'm sure it plays a part.
Yeah.
But being from a town where there's like one intersection and like two red lights, it was, your options were, I stay here,
Hmm.
I move somewhere that I'm completely not used to
Yeah.
and try and survive and probably end up either close to or in the same exact situation.
Mm.
Or here's this like potential golden ticket
Yeah.
across the
Yeah.
country, out of the country, wherever I could possibly go, and
Yeah.
put my best foot forward. It was always kind of like this could be the foundation for something new.
Yeah.
And
And I totally get that because I grew up in a very small town as well. Like we actually had no stoplights. We had one major intersection. And yeah, it's one of those towns where you live and die there. And I remember my whole life growing up, every single person always told me like, you need to get out of here. You need to get out of here. And luckily for me, I had that option of going to college. It didn't come easily. I didn't have parents that had set me up in a college fund. I had to put myself through college, but nonetheless, I did. So I totally get that. It's kind of like you have to take the opportunities as they come up. And I think it's also like a fear thing too. You hear it and not just hear it from other people, but you actually see people living that life of them being stuck there and not getting out. And it, you know, kind of makes you scared being 17, 18 years old. Like, I don't want that to be my life. So I think it's awesome. Well, it's like I said, it's common for a lot of people to go into the military right out of high school. Um, but how did the military prepare you for real life, or did it even prepare you for real life?
yeah, so it is interesting that we have a lot of overlap. And I think the military is in the same way, where your largest portion of active duty military is age range 8 to 25.
Mhm.
There's some people that fall outside those groups, but that's your junior guys. Those are the people who are at the entry levels, and they've just come out of either high school, or they weren't really finding what they wanted as a young adult, and now they're in the military. um so a lot of the mentality when you're at that entry point, it becomes like almost your second coming in high school. This is where you meet all your new friends, you all get into the same types of trouble together.
Yeah.
And for those of us who didn't go to college, which is a majority of the entry level of the military, there's a huge opportunity to learn from good and bad examples all at the same time, develop skills that you haven't learned being in a classroom.
Yeah.
And it is a career that pays much more than what a lot of these kids have made so far in their lives. um Not to say that the pay is amazing, but there's an opportunity there for definitely personal development and growth. Some of the things that I had to learn came within those first 2 years on like my 5-year contract. It was learning from people who had much more skin in the game. There are people that are not much older than you. Like,
Mhm.
so imagine like the lifespan of a military career, only a certain percentage, and it's a very small group, make it to that 20-year mark. So the people that you're really talking to could be like 5, 6, 10 years older than you. There's a range. So the people that you're learning from, more often than not, have only been in, I'd say, about 3 to 5 years longer than you have.
Wow, I didn't know that.
There's a different level of mentorship. So I
Yeah.
think the opportunities there are a large amount of networking and learning from other people's experience.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know, realize what the age range was as far as, like how long people stay in the military. So you served a 5-year term. Did you end up re-signing for another term, or you end up?
No, I honestly, a lot of my mentality was to build a foundation. I think I got that in
Yeah,
like satisfactory for me. I still have like room to grow, but I don't think the room that I had to grow was within the military. It just wasn't something that I either desired or was going to be capable of continuing at the pace that it was going.
yeah. What did you feel like you were lacking?
So a lot of it's like, I'm not sure that I really had the same level of desire as when I came in to continue to do the same type of work that I was doing day in and day out, and not have like my desired income or my desired like balance of, hey, this is what I have as my personal space and time, and this is what I do for work. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
like work-life balance wasn't really a thing that I felt was where I wanted it to be. And then beyond that, there's a huge amount of learning and opportunity that the military offers, but also there's a known issue that the military is not going to be everyone's only thing. Like everybody gets out, and the majority of us get out before that 20-year mark and don't achieve retirement within the military.
mhm,
So I think it's very critical for anyone in the military or thinking about the military to understand like this isn't going to be the only thing you do, most likely. So
yeah,
you can build a network of people around you and build your skills up and then grow outside the military. That's the path most people end up having to take no matter what they do.
yeah. No, I think I've never looked at it from that perspective of, um, you join the military and you meet a ton of people from, all over the world, and you're most likely traveling, you're within the US, outside of the US. So you really have that opportunity to network and meet a lot of people. Are you, those connections that you've made within the military, have they benefited you outside now that you're no longer serving?
I believe so. More often than not, especially with Marines or like Army, or let's say people are in specific groups like EOD folks who dealt with like explosives, or combat engineers who were out building bridges in the hot sun all day. Like once you have that shared background, it almost becomes like, instead of being your alma mater, your graduating class, these are your brand of people. These are the people who marched the same paths you did and did all of the same training and experience all of the pain and happiness that's associated with the lifestyle that you just left, you know?
Yeah, it's like, you always hear it's a brotherhood, and I really think it is, because the military life is just so, there's a lot of words to sum it up, but you know, it's not something that everyone experiences. So I can definitely see uh, the connection that you make, whether you served with that person or not. Just saying, you were in the military and they also served. I think you kind of have like that camaraderie between each other. So I think that's awesome. What I'm really interested in hearing is how you transitioned into civilian life, because I don't think a lot of people realize how hard that is. And it's really sad. Veterans serve and it's all they've known, and it's really like starting all over again. And like you mentioned, a lot of people don't realize that going into the military is probably not something you're going to do for your entire life.
Right. So I wouldn't say I've completed my transition. There's still some things I'm learning and trying to lock on in regards to future employment or licensing, accreditation. All of those things are a big factor right now, and where I currently stand in life. but the connections I've made and the things I've been doing on like my own time, being proactive and trying to learn from as many people as possible. Since April, I left the military in April, and since then I've been in constant communication with people in the finance industry. It's why I've started my podcast. It's why I'm talking to you now.
Yeah.
Because without meeting the people that I met, and this is one of the big things I like to talk about, is I started a conversation on Instagram, and the person that I talked to, his name is Brandon Childers, and like that conversation alone led me to a conference called Mill Money Con, and that was at the end of April. So 11 days after I get out of the military, or actually less, I think it was like 9 days after. Signed my contract, done, and I'm at a conference listening to people who have been in the finance industry for 20, 30 years. And since then, I've just been like hammering, what can I learn and develop personally to help other people? And that's kind of what I've been doing for the past 90 days and what I plan on continuing to do for as many years as possible until I feel like satisfied with it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'd love to hear more about, um, kind of your journey with your finances as of right now. What you've learned, what, was kind of the driving factor behind that.
Yeah. So on my end, I think a lot of it is seeing the things that I've seen. So Putnam County, where I'm from in Florida, like we talked about, is kind of just like a dead end for a lot of people. So a lot of people that I knew weren't like, there was no growth for them. It was just, this is what I'm doing to afford to continue just like living as I have been. Or in the military, a lot of guys end up in situations where that first and the 15th is like so important to them. Those checks that are coming in, it becomes like a dependency. They almost have to stay in because they have a guaranteed source of income. And if they don't have that, they're going to end up struggling a lot. Because a lot of people end up squandering that away instead of, and I don't think it's so much a personality problem as it is like a lack of information being fed to that level of like, hey, this is how you should be managing your finances so that you might have more beer money by the weekend instead of like blowing it every single day. And now you have to eat like the meals that are provided to you because you have no, like, there's no wiggle room.
Mhm.
Because that paycheck to paycheck mentality, it exists in the military. Like, we're not immune to it. And a lot of people that are lacking like financial literacy, financial education end up in that cycle where they're very aware of when that next guaranteed paycheck hits. They watch the clock. It's like, okay, I get paid on this day. I have enough money to like buy this, this, and this until then.
Yeah, I'm gonna
And then
make my
it's gone.
$20 stretch. Gonna make that $20 last. You brought that up, and I actually want to ask. So I find that so interesting, that people in the military are so heavily dependent on it. And it makes sense, just like a lot of people are so dependent on their checks. But I think what makes it even worse, now that I'm thinking about it, is, like I was saying earlier, for the guys in the military, it's really all they've known. So to come out of it and not have a paycheck that hits twice a month that you can rely on, you're really starting from scratch. But my biggest question, and maybe this is just me being ignorant, but I always had this impression that, you get your pay, you're in the military, you get paid, and yeah, it might not be a lot, but what other expenses are people in the military, what are they expending if they're living on the barracks, in the barracks, or, things like that? Like what? expenses do you have that would cause you to be in that situation of living paycheck to paycheck?
Yeah, so it's not just folks in the military that know how much people in the military are making. There's an article I'll share in my description and I'll shoot it over to you. Um, but there was a huge article by the New York Times talking about how certain businesses, veteran run, non-veteran run, end up like right outside the base. And then there's kind of almost a predatory approach to how they handle a constant cycle of 18 to 25-year-olds with indisposable money, right? So when you have like that consistent market and you know who you're approaching, a lot of these businesses are coming at it, especially the joke that's so common in the military is like, okay, you take the most junior guy and he goes to buy a car because how else is he going to get around? When he gets to the car, he gets sold on a 23% APR Mustang because that's just like the main thing that military kids are ending up in, right? So there's a lot of predatory business practices. On top of that, I think a lot of it is that first taste of consistent money, and it's government money, so it's really good, right? Until you're spending it all on like monsters and cans of dip. And that's not to like over exaggerate it. That's not everybody, but there's a large culture around buying things that are like instant gratification. So when you get a bunch of really young guys in a room, and girls for that matter, and you tell them, hey, you could save 20% of your money and live really well off by the time you're like 65. But those people also have the idea of, well, I could get sent overseas tomorrow, so why would I not spend my money now while I have it? And that's a huge part of the mentality. And I don't think it's exclusive to the military. I think some of that exists on like college campuses where they're like, I'm
YOLO.
already X amount of dollars in debt. And I mean, this is all the money I have right now. So I'm going to buy the things I like right now instead of, coming at it from a more balanced approach.
Yeah. Thank you for giving me insight on that, because I've always wondered that, especially now living in Colorado, Colorado Springs, we're right next to we have a big military base here. And I just always wondered that because I hear it like a common factor. I see a lot of people in the finance industry whose specific niche is to help people in the military. And, I just always wonder what exactly you guys are spending your money on. And I don't think it's just a problem just within the military. Like you said, college campus kids. I went to college. I know what it's like to, have money. And then it's like, oh, I'm going to go out with my friends. I'm going to get an Uber. I'm going to go out to drink and party, eat, whatever it is. And getting that instant gratification type of thing. And just wish that there were more resources out there for people who are in that younger age range, early 20s, just getting out of high school. Because if I knew the things that I know now back when I was 16 years old, I would be a lot better than I am today financially. So, but thank you for answering that question.
I think I really do come from a unique perspective, because when people spending their money as soon as they have it in their bank account, when that's all you see, a large part of what you're surrounded by becomes what you want to get away from. And I've met some really great people. I had an officer over me and he ended up becoming more interested in his younger folks and their finances. He was like, hey, the reason I'm doing this is because I had someone who was so bad off financially that they made the ultimate decision to end their own life.
Wow.
And that became like his driving force, is like, if I could prevent even one of you from making that ultimate decision by just helping you approach your finances differently. And he would teach us how to like use a retirement account to its like most effective. At least in the military, you have like a set retirement
Mhm.
account that you can put your money into. And
Yeah.
I don't think that mindset like shift, because I was 19 going on 20 when we had these types of discussions. He started having everybody come and sit down for financial Fridays, and we would sit there, eat some lunch, and just talk. Hey, these are the things that I'm concerned about with money, or have you ever heard of this? And he talked about things that would range from retirement planning to estate planning and the death tax, and like how gifts to family members are taxed, um, down to like the nitty gritty of how do I build a basic budget. And
Mhm.
he would help us with all of those things. And I think without that insight and level of like personal care, I don't think I would be as interested as I am today, because I've almost kind of taken that blueprint and put it into everything I do now. So it's like my target age range of people, I live in it. So it's like 18 to 35. That's kind of where I like place my boundaries of like, here are the people that probably need the most help as far as like where their money is and what they aren't aware of or haven't been taught. So as a 23-year-old, I am learning and teaching at the same time. And I think that's a very good position for me, and hopefully a good position for my like audiences or whoever I end up talking to, because it's like, I'm not that far off from where the people that need help are. Like, I've figured out some things that have helped me financially, but I don't think that I know everything. And the things that I learned, I immediately regurgitate as soon as like I have a grasp on what the ins and outs of them are.
Yeah, and I think you should always be in that learning and teaching phase, because there's so much to learn. Um, and I also think that it's great that you're teaching as you're learning, because it gives people, relevance. They can relate to you, and they're, I would much rather, work with someone and talk to them if I know they've been through the same things that I've been through. I was just having a conversation with someone else from the Fincon group a couple days ago, and I mentioned to her that a lot of people who are in the finance industry are people that have, or at least historically, people who are in the finance industry were people who went to school, who probably came from middle to upper class families that put them through college. They might have had a family member who was also in finance, so that's how they got into it. And they're trying to teach and guide people who are from like a totally different, side of the world, that different side of life, on how to manage their finances. And it's hard to connect to someone like that. Whereas I feel like today, a lot of people who are in the finance industry and who are influencers in the finance industry, like the Fincon group, they are real people, like they're real life people who are sharing their struggles and their hardships and things that they've been through. And it makes them that much more relatable, and making people want to actually work with them.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like coming into, so when I got a sponsored ticket to Mill Money Con, like I came in on a scholarship ticket,
Mhm.
and there's 115 people there that I've never met before. Um, I think that was like really the driving force, because I had only recorded one episode of this podcast. It was very much like an experimental thing
Mhm.
for me. And now I've set up such a network with not only the people from Mill Money Con, but now going into FinCon. That's how I met you. It's how I'm
Yeah.
sure I'm going to meet a lot more people that I'm going to have episodes with. But the idea that all it takes is like X amount of like communication with other people. You throw a little money at a ticket to get in a room, and now you're opened up to all this experience and knowledge, all these years of working in the finance industry or whatever industry it might be that whoever is trying to like break into. I'm sure there's big conferences for welders that are coming into building their own like business, whatever it might be. I think there's opportunity out there for people who are trying to learn. Specifically in the finance industry, it's like, I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but Maslow's hierarchy of need, it's a psychological principle.
I have.
So with finance, it's like you're reaching people that are at the top, people that are at the bottom, and people that are at the middle all at the same time. So it's like, let's talk about retirement planning. That might not be everybody's jam, but also like a few rooms over, there's someone that's talking about how do I build a budget and teach my kids to do the same thing.
Yeah.
So there's a huge range and wealth of knowledge, and I don't think it's exclusive to the financial industry, but I think it's really important to understand that there are people out there willing to teach, and there are people out there that are willing to help you learn enough to where you can teach things.
Yeah.
Tying it back to the military, that's kind of like the idea of training the trainers. You get everybody in the room that's interested in something enough to be like, okay, here are the things that I know. Here are the ways that I teach these things to my folks. So what if I present you a training program that you can adapt to the crowds that you're going to face outside this room? And now I've made, instead of having just 20 students, I've made 20 new teachers that are going to bring the same information to a larger and larger crowd. And then it's like a very positive pyramid scheme.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. No, but you're so right. And that's why this is my first year going to Fincon. Is this also your first year?
It is.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I have no idea what to expect, but I'm really excited about it because like you said, there is literally something for everyone, no matter where you are in this industry, there is something for you to learn, whether you're all the way up at the top or you're all the way at the bottom. And I feel like even if you are at the top, revisiting the basics and the foundation to, refresh your memory, there's things that may have changed that you don't even know about. So I'm very excited about it. But I want to hear kind of what you're working on right now as far as your finances go. Like, what is something that you're still struggling with, and what is something that you feel very confident in when it comes to your finances?
Yeah, so I think from my perspective, right, coming out of the military, not everything was guaranteed. A lot of the experiences that I've seen work for me so far are just from talking to people.
Yeah.
It's not really like me throwing resumes at people has worked for me, because it might not work. But also, I mean, there's conversations I've had, but they haven't really produced the same value as networking has. And networking has become like my go-to for branching into, let's say I wanted to open consulting on a website and like have people just come to me, explain what they're interested in, what they want to learn, and then I can open them to the same network that's available to me. Instead of just overloading them all at once with, oh, here are the options and things that I've learned. One of the big things I'm working on right now is getting licensed to become a financial advisor. So I think that perspective would help bring like credibility.
Yeah.
Not to say that I have to be licensed to talk about finances, because I'm doing it right now and I'm unlicensed. I am not a financial advisor. I'm not here to like tell you what stocks to pick or ask you to hand me your accounts and like let me
Yeah,
draw.
no, but like I said earlier, people will work with you just knowing that you've lived through it, that you've been through it. I think
Right.
that is worth so much more than a piece of paper, that you get from college or
Yeah.
whatever certification you may get.
Like coming out of last year, even I learned a lot about the home buying process,
Mhm.
and I bought my first home here in North Carolina because I wasn't willing to go back down to Florida to live there again. I escaped once. I don't want to have to do it twice.
Yeah, don't want to go back. No, congratulations. That's awesome. I didn't know that you purchased a home. So you purchased in 2021.
Right.
What was
In
that like
potentially one
during
of the most difficult entries that I
what
could
was
have.
that like during that whole crazy housing market? I mean, we're still in a crazy housing market, but
I'd love to say it was difficult. I'd love to say that I like really had to fight for an offer. Um, so like full transparency, Jacksonville, North Carolina is big military town. Everyone from Camp Lejeune, and Marine Corps Air Station New River, all of them are out here, and everybody that gets sent here is typically in the military. So my neighborhood average like cost of household, it's gone up. But when I was in the buying side of this market, it was August 2021.
mhm,
So I had 6 months until I was out of the military. I was working a night job and the military at the same time. So my income was a little different than the rest of the crowd. Um, I did not end up getting a VA loan. I wasn't very educated on the process. And I went through just a conventional loan, but ended up buying my house at, so it's a 3 bedroom, 2 bath. Like
mhm. Awesome.
I love my backyard. That's what I
Yeah.
care about more than the house. Like the
Oh,
whole
a
house
nice
could
backyard
fall
makes
apart and
everything.
all I care about is the backyard.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I we only loaned 150K for it in like what everybody described as the worst housing market ever. And it was like first offer accepted, done. Like it, I don't know that coming from that position, I could talk very much on the housing market. And I've learned a lot from people who are in real estate and seeing some of the offers that exist out there versus
Mhm.
what I got. I think I definitely got really lucky as someone who's transitioning out of the military and didn't have like infinite money to deal with like fluctuation of prices.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that you say that, and maybe this might be a little life hack for anyone listening, but like you said, where you live, there's a big military presence, and it's very much same here in Colorado Springs. We have a very large military presence. And my boyfriend and I have actually gone out and like looked at a few houses, a few open houses, and talked to a few realtors, and they said that for the most part, the houses here are priced at a pretty steady rate just because of the military presence here. They can't really price them out. So I don't know if that's true or not. It's kind of what we've heard from the realtors that we've talked to, is that the housing market in like heavy military areas aren't going to fluctuate too much. But at the same time, I'm from Hawaii. We have a big military presence in Hawaii too, and the housing market there is insane. It's like
Yeah,
over $1 million.
I think
So
that's
I
a
don't know
very
how
unique
anyone is
location.
afford that.
I think that's a very unique location because of like when you combine military presence and a huge community with also like this is a tourist destination
Yeah.
and we're here to sell you an experience.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think it benefits the people that are local to the area as much as it benefits the people that are trying to like
Mhm.
invest and sell homes there.
Yeah.
Um,
I know the housing market in Hawaii is crazy insane. But circling back to my question, I didn't let you finish up. What is one thing that you feel confident in right now as far as your finances go that you were working
So
with?
I think a lot of people like confidence and money are very relative. And I think it's a very subjective, like case by case thing. I don't think my situation's perfect, but I know that no matter what I do, I have the like drive and willpower to achieve at least balance. Whether that's making enough to take care of all the things that I have to take care of and then have some spending money on the side, or that is what my wife and I are doing right now, which is like building out a business plan. There's a lot of opportunity out here. So a lot of the advice that I've gotten in the past 3 months, whether it's going to Mill Money Con or Fincon, or even the virtual summit that I did with the Small Business Administration, there was like 4 days of people just talking.
Oh, wow.
And I came out of that with like, I want to say a folder that's 10 gigs of just like straight business advice, how to do SBA loans, how to accomplish like hurdles in a tax season when it comes to your business. And I think just the ability to adapt to different situations and learn from other people is probably where I'm most confident financially, because if I wasn't able to learn anything, I'd be stuck in a pattern. And
Yeah.
just like keeping an open mind to new ways to build wealth and new ways to accomplish the same things, and not necessarily have to work myself into the ground doing so.
Yeah, I think that's what life is all about, is just having an open mind. And when you keep that open mind is when you really invite opportunity for growth. Being able to know what you're good at and what you're not good at, and asking for help on the things that you're not good at. So I think that's awesome. So I have 2 questions left that I want to ask you in the last 15 minutes that we have. So the first question is, if you had to do it all over again and take the same path, would you have stayed on that path, or would you have changed it and gone straight into finance?
That's a good one. So I think a lot of the things that I did had a lot to do with timing. Like coming straight out of high school and not joining the military immediately, working some like tougher, more like labor intensive jobs, like being under mobile homes in Florida heat in the middle of the summer and trying to do 3 of those a day versus like, okay, I have to do this, this, and this, and then I'm good for the week. I think the mindset change over the years has allowed me to kind of experience things at the times that I needed to experience them.
Yeah.
Like I very much grew up in a short amount of time, and I think that's the case for a lot of people who are in like situations where there's like top level control of here's your schedule, here's where you have to be. Like when you're under less stress and you kind of know what's coming, I think it allows you more time to like develop personal skills.
Yeah.
So a lot of what I went through was almost kind of necessary for me, because if I was walking around today with the same mindset of, well, I'm right, and I don't think that there's people out there that have my best interests at heart, so I'm just going to keep doing things my way. Like that's very much the ideas that I started off with versus now. So I
Mhm.
don't think I would change much. If I did change, I would listen more than I spoke. Like, because the people that I was supposed to be learning from that I blew off, I think could have taught me a lot more.
Mhm.
And I think that some of the like time that I spent learning the things that I have has allowed me to be in a better position than I would be if I didn't. So
Yeah.
I think being a more active listener and being proactive about like education and how to make my next steps in the right way would have benefited me. But other than that, I don't think I would change very much.
Oh, that's good to hear. And I think a lot of people feel that way, like you said, it's all with timing. Um, I don't think I would change anything, the path that I took either. But the last question that I have is, what is one piece of advice you'd give to someone who feels like they can never get out of their financial situation?
So having had that mindset for like years at a time, like when I was 18, I like left my house that I was living in. I moved 3 or 4 more times after that, just trying to get like some stability. And then I left again to go like do initial training. And all right, now I'm going across the world to live in Japan for 2 years. And like all these experiences happened because I took very little steps. Like, I don't think that everybody has to follow the same path, but everybody has to do something, right? You
Yeah.
you can't complain that nothing's going to happen for you and then stay stagnant in the place that you're in and see growth.
Mhm.
So my only advice to people who feel like they don't have a way out is like take a step outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And when you start to feel the pressure of the outside world, lean into it and continue to take the steps that you feel are right for you. You're gonna fall down eventually. And it's all about just continuing in a positive direction and keeping positive momentum. So if you take the first step, you will eventually be able to run with whatever you find.
Yeah, no, that's awesome advice because I have clients who, are in debt or I have followers and they tell me that they're drowning in debt and they'll never get out of it. And it's like, well, you have to start. That's the simplest way I can put it is you have to start somewhere and it doesn't have to be A to Z jump, you
Right.
take it little by little but not doing anything about it is worse than taking it slow.
Yeah. And I don't think that other than like internet popularity and like artificial growth on social media, outside of those ideas, I don't think success is an overnight thing.
Oh, definitely.
Um, and even in those ideas, sometimes it's not. Um, but the idea that things are just instantaneous has become like very prevalent today.
Yeah.
I think a
Social
lot of
media.
people are caught up in the idea that like I have to be perfect and I have to be perfect like right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, personal development is a process. No matter what angle you're taking it from, whether you want to be the world's best chess player or you want to be like financially independent for the rest of your life and be able to send your kids to college on like a whim.
Mhm. Yeah, I was listening to another podcast and um, the host said, you can't compare your day one to someone's day 365. And I think that's what a lot of people do when they follow, um, influencers or successful business owners. They see everything that these people have. And when they don't get those same results instantaneously, they get, you know, disheartened and kind of give up. And it's like, you have to keep working on it. You can't just expect to wake up one night and you have all of the world's issues figured out and you're on top of the world. And even people who are uber successful, you're never on top of the world. You're always going up and down. There's always something that comes out of nowhere and blindsides you. And it feels like you're back at square one. You probably feel that way. I feel that way too. I've come a long way with my finances, but there are still days that I work through where I'm like, I feel like I'm making no progress. I feel like, I'm back where I started. So it's having a strong mindset and always just, even if you have to drag one foot in front of the other, doesn't even have to be a step. You just drag your foot.
Yeah, I think a good way to sum that up is like motivation is just a word. It's the mindset behind it. And even if you have to like fake it until you make it, you're still on a like path of positive momentum. So like that false motivation can eventually turn into something that's like, man, I was just joking, and now I've like stumbled into a room full of CEOs, and I've seen
Yeah.
that firsthand for other people. But it's like, how do you achieve the success you're after if you don't like shake a few hands and walk into rooms that you might not have like been accepted in if you didn't like wave your golden ticket to get into the chocolate factory, like
Yeah.
not everybody gets everything they want, but you can start to take advantage of opportunities at any level.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The world is full of opportunities, and like you said, you just gotta fake it till you make it. You shouldn't fake it too hard where you're scamming people, but if it gets you if you're telling a little fib to get you in the right room at the right time, and it all works out for you, I mean, it's how the world works. I think it's, life is a game. You gotta play it accordingly.
I love that. And that falls into some of the topics that I talk about too, where it's like some of the things we've talked about, it's like shift in mindset, controlling certain behaviors to kind of almost tweak your trajectory. And the last thing where you were talking about, like, when you start to feel that imposter syndrome, it's like, okay, how do I make this, like, how do I turn this feeling of maybe I shouldn't be in this room to I'm here and I know why, and this is my brand, and now I have to sell myself. So kind of like self-marketing almost. And that's one of the things I like to try and get people to understand is like, when you're in an interview, you're not trying to necessarily get the position that you applied for. Maybe you're trying to connect with the person at the other end of the table and say, hey, this is who I am and this is what I can do for you. But also, like, I understand the gravity of not everybody is like perfect, and I'm here to learn and develop myself so that one day I can be on the other side of this interview table. It's like, I want to be able to learn and develop just as much as I want to get paid.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's so much great advice. And I really appreciate you, coming on here and telling your story and really shedding some light into your life in the military, and probably a lot of people's lives in the military that myself and other civilians don't really know about. I personally feel like military life is definitely blocked off to the rest of the world. It's not something that at least for me, I don't see or hear people talk about it a lot, and what really goes on. So thank you for sharing that, and sharing your entire story. And I really commemorate you for what you're doing, and the lifestyle that you're living after, growing up in a poor community and going through military life and your own struggles. So I think our listeners can appreciate that as well. But if you want to follow Dawson's journey or listen to his podcast, I'll have that all linked in the show notes. But I'm going to end this here. Dawson,